Thank you, Josh. And I just want to say thank you for everyone taking valuable time here for the last panel of this year's Steiner Symposium. And I'm happy to see many of you here today. And before I ask some of the specific questions for our panelists, I just want to take some time to introduce each of them so you can know a little better about their background. So maybe that it will be easier for you if you want to have some question about some of their things they will say during this discussion. So we have our first panelist, Mr. Miguel, Aguei, and he is graduate from Bradley with a degree in sports communication in 2022. As a former student athlete, he competes in track and is the current Bradley record holder in the 60-meter hurdles. And as a student, Aguei complete an internship as a digital production assistant with NBC Universal in its production of the 2021 Tokyo Olympic. And upon graduation, he took a position with the Chicago Fair professional soccer team and has since moved to the Big Ten network, where he currently assists with the production and live streaming of the all Big Ten games and other Big Ten content. And our second panelist, Dr. Qingru Xu, is an assistant professor in the Department of Communication at the University of Kentucky. Dr. Xu's research interests include sports media, identity, and athletic branding. She has published her work in journals including Mass Communication and Society, Journal of Broadcasting and Electronic Media, Communication and Sport, International Review for the Sociology of Sport, and the Journal of Gender Studies. And our third panelist is Coach Tim Regan. He is the head coach of the men's soccer team at Bradley University. Regan was an All-American soccer player at Bradley University before embarking on a 5-year career in the Major League Soccer with the New York Red Bulls and Chivas USA. After retiring from professional soccer, Regan spent 3 years as the chief scout for Toronto FC, which is a team of the MLS. He worked 2 years for the U.S. Soccer Federation as a youth national team scout and technical advisor and youth national team assistant coach before transitioning to the coaching full-time. And Regan coached professionally at Indy 11, which is a second division professional, for 3 seasons and then make his way back to Peoria with the Braves. He served as Jim DeRose's assistant coach for 7 seasons here at Bradley and took over as head coach after DeRose retired following the 2023 season and regularly recruits international soccer players nowadays. So everyone, please join me welcome our 3 great panelists that join us today. So our panel topic is sport and globalization. Globalization is a very popular topic nowadays, maybe ever since the first modern Olympics in 1896 in Greece. And nowadays we can see fans from all over the world can see just a lot of professional team player their favorite sports. And for some country, they will just use the social media and traditional media to consume sports that they may not actually play every day in their life. So according to Statista, which is a German online platform, it says the revenue in the global sports market is projected to reach about $117 billion in 2025. And this number will dramatically increase in the next following years. And in the global comparison, if we look at the different countries all around the world, the United States actually produce the most revenue nowadays in the global market, which is not very surprising. And if we look at all sports, actually soccer and American football produce the most revenue in the global sports market. And also based on our panelist expertise today, I would like to say our first topic for today will be focus on talking about the global influence on soccer development in the US and China, and also we will talk about American football's development overseas. So we will start our specific question today. My first question is for Coach Regan. So you have such diverse identity and experiences in soccer. You used to be a professional soccer player in the MLS and also to be a scout for the youth generation like soccer team. And also you are the head coach now for the Bradley University. So throughout all these year experiences, would you like to share with our audience like what kind of interesting story you have, what kind of experiences or challenges that you think international factors actually influence the soccer, especially in your career and in the United States?
Yeah, as the global game, the sport in our country is well behind the rest of the world. You don't have to look too far if you just look at overall results and the nature of World Cups and major events that all eyes of the world are on. The U.S. is behind. And one of the biggest reasons is investment. We don't have the revenue generation in the sport of soccer in America. And salary caps are really small compared to leagues like the NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA. So you're attracting players that are near the end of their career, that come for the comforts of American life because you don't get hounded as you do by media and other paparazzi in other countries, or up-and-coming players that are trying to make themselves onto a scene and then move on. So therefore, we're just a bit weaker. But as the global nature of the game, if it relates to Major League Soccer, the league is still heavily foreign. And the American pool of players isn't big enough to back what is now 30 teams. You have to have some appreciation for Major League Soccer. I do more than most, but the league started with only 10 teams 30 years ago, and they've grown to 30. And the valuation of those clubs has gone significantly up. So the owners will eventually see their return on investment, but it's taken 30 years to get to that point. And the money from TV revenue and things aren't there. But on the global side, where the soccer market is different than when you're in your traditional American sports, is we tend to trade players and have free agency in the American sport. That's just the way it goes. In the European and international market all the way around, including South America, players get bought and sold, and for large dollar amounts. So the benefits of the Chicago Bears selling their marquee quarterback to London would be $100 million, and they would take that cash and then use it to continue to grow their product. So the global nature of our sport is just player movement and therefore money movement. And if I walk around campus and I see enough people, Miguel, one of them when he was a student, that wears a soccer jersey, but it's not American. It's usually British, and it's usually a teams that they followed from watching when they were kids or that they picked up at an older age. And so we're a bit behind as it relates to the American side, but we follow global trends. So we're trying to get a better system of selling players because it's big for revenue, and a better system of bringing eyes to the game in America. Of course, the World Cup, for any students in the audience, you were too young. We had one round of it in 1994, and it created a professional league. So it was a massive step. What will the next World Cup do? We'll touch on that later in our discussion, and I won't dive into the Messi topic because that's another question that we'll eventually go more deep into. But on the global side here for America, it's how can we follow the rest of the world and mirror them better? We're really good at marketing. We're really good at broadcasting. We're really good at making money. It just hasn't hit the sport of soccer as it has the rest of the world.
So you are also work as a chief scout before, and also for the youth sports. So have you have any challenges like recruit some of the international athletes or international talented? Because we know that in the European League, they will usually recruit some of the player from, for example, like South American countries, which show the talent at a very young age. Do we have such a system here in the United States?
Yeah, our system is, as I said earlier, just weaker, as are our scouting networks. We don't quite put enough money into it yet. Data really helps though. Video technology has really helped, and it's not that old. It's only a few years now that you can record basically any game that's going on in the world with, we have two with the Bradley soccer team. We used to pay a student manager in 2019 to record everything we did. When COVID hit, we went AI like everybody else, and the robot's on a pole and it follows the ball. And so we don't have to need a human for that anymore. So our ability to scout around the world has really grown from grassroots technology for videoing. And that's important at all levels. For us at Bradley, there's not a single player that I've ever scouted doesn't start with a video. And then I go there and I find them afterward. It has to be part of the process. So in terms of if you go back, we didn't have that technology when I started with Toronto in 2008. And so I went to Senegal, I went to the Gambia, I went all over Central America, I went all over the US looking for these players. And if you've never traveled abroad alone, it can be tricky. Language skills, safety. Don't go to San Salvador on your free time. I would not advise it. I did. I stick out a little bit. I'm fairly white compared to that side of the world. And it's a safety issue. You just have to get around. And I'm looking for that diamond in the rough. I'm looking for that player that can come and help the club I was working for, or now Bradley. And so the challenges are a multitude. The cultural difference, food, language is a big one. Of course, here at Bradley, bringing somebody that English is their second language to take the same classes you're taking. And so they're intelligent people, but they have to process everything in a different language. To the sports side, we use so many phrases in English that we don't realize don't make sense to a foreigner. So like we have a phrase in soccer, we call it back seal. So that means you're all facing that way. If you had to run back on defense, run that way and get the ball. We call it back seal. It makes no sense in the English language, translated to another language for what the sport is. So all these little details add up when you're talking to athletes and you're trying to educate them about life in America and how we operate, because we are different than the rest of the world. So globalization is good, but it does have its challenges.
Thank you. And my next question is for Miguel. And you have experiences of working for the Chicago Fair professional soccer team, and you also a really huge soccer fan and want to expand the soccer all around the United States. So would you like to talk about like some of those experiences? How do you see the influence of globalization on the players, on the team, and on the league in general? For example, what kind of benefits you can see, what kind of challenges you have seen throughout the years?
So yeah, I started working with Major League Soccer in 2022 post-graduation. I worked with the Chicago Fire, and you know, MLS has definitely grown in the last 30 years, but as Tim mentioned, it's nowhere near where it should be. It's still in a growing process. And what I can say in my first season was I noticed that depending on where you are in the US, you know, fan attendance is drastically different. For us, it was about 12,000 to 14,000 fans per game on average. You go somewhere else like LA and it's about 30,000 to 40,000 fans. So it's a massive shift, you know, when you're going to a stadium. And Chicago Fire plays at Soldier Field, which is a stadium that can hold up to 63,000 people. So if you're going to a stadium that holds 63,000 people, and you're only seeing 12,000 people, it kind of looks wonky and it looks weird on TV when you're watching it. And you can essentially hear everything because, you know, the culture here in America is different, you know. Games played in Europe, the fans are chanting, singing all game long. You can hear it in the broadcast, but sometimes it's not the same here in America. So that was my experience my first year there. And then my second year there, that is when Lionel Messi decided to join MLS, and it created this exciting buzz around MLS and around soccer, and you started to see all these ads with the GOAT symbol because previously before that Lionel Messi had won the World Cup, which was a huge point for him in his career. So then the league shifted to how can we market Lionel Messi, right? And how can we integrate Messi into the league? So you start to see collaborations, you know. All the Miami teams are creating jerseys with Messi's name on the back, and there's all this paraphernalia with Messi on the back to create this buzz. It's kind of one of those things where, you know, you're getting one of the greatest players to join your league. To make a reference, it's like getting LeBron before he retires. And LeBron right now is still a great athlete, even though he's 40 years old. And when that Messi buzz came to the league, there was more excitement, there was more engagement, more people wanted to come to games, and we kind of really used the whole Messi buzz to sell an experience to fans. It wasn't more so about come to a soccer game because you like soccer. It was come to a soccer game for the experience, for the activities that happen before kickoff, for the networking opportunities, for a Saturday night where you're probably not doing anything. You come with your friends, you watch a nice soccer game, you got some food, some drinks, that kind of thing. And once we sold that experience, we got more fans. And some of the things were out of our control. You know, there were certain games where Messi didn't show up for whatever reason, and fans were upset about that. But I do believe because of Messi coming to the league as a whole, it definitely shifted the league. And Chicago Fire played Messi on Sunday, and they had about 62,000 people show up. And the year before that, when I was working there, they played against Inter Miami, and it was about the same turnout, 62,000. Messi didn't show up, but 62,000, they got a win, and it was a great experience. And these are the things that we are using to catapult the sport and grow soccer in the U.S.
I think that's a good point. It reminds me of Messi actually visit China for an exception game in Hong Kong. However, because of some of the communication issues, it turns out Messi didn't actually go to play that game, and it just raised a lot of criticism from the Chinese media and also other people in Hong Kong to say, I just buy the ticket and to just see this specific player, but it did not really show up. And they asked for the organization to pay their money back. So that is another really interesting example. And also, I think Coach Regan, you actually went to the Chicago last Sunday to see Messi's game. Would you like to share some of the interesting things you have noticed from that game?
Yeah, it's my first time since he's been in the country watching him play here. And I saw him 20 years ago, but my first time in current days. And the impact was magnificent. You've never seen an away team dominate a venue like that, where you come in and there's Messi jerseys everywhere. You didn't see any Inter Miami jerseys with other players' names on it. They were all pink and black because that's their colors, and it was number 10. And then of course his national team is Argentina, so you saw their blue and white stripes everywhere, Messi jerseys. And being in the venue, one of his specialties is a free kick. So when there's a foul around the goal, he has the skill of putting it in. And they started chanting his name. He took 3 in the game, and they were like, the whole crowd stood up. It was a magnificent experience in that way. I felt bad for the Fire sometimes in terms of where it was in terms of their home fans. But as far as the global nature of the game, he is a perfect definition of the topic.
How do you think Leo Messi come to the MLS, how that influence other soccer player in the United States?
There's going to be a positive side of everything. There's always the haters, if you will. They're going to say he's old, he's washed up, he's here for money. All the above are probably correct. But he won the World Cup only 2 years ago because it was a Winter World Cup. So he's not that far beyond, but it's a lower level league for him. So he does dominate quite well. And I think there's a positive side to that where you see his highlights and it shows up around the world with MLS in the background. To the negative side would be players thinking that the level of the league is just too low. For the American players, as someone who really pays attention to the details like I do, he raises the standard of people around him. He has an excellence that you're scared to mess up. So you therefore, you just have to be better at what you do. And you could see that in his team versus when I watch the other teams. I don't see young American players having that respect for their peer.
Thank you. And the next question is for Dr. Xu. So Dr. Xu is from China, and we know soccer is one of the most popular sports in China, and currently with more than 2 million fans. However, the Chinese national team, especially men's team, I checked their ranking now, they actually rank 94th in the world rank table, which is pretty low compared with the Chinese fans' enthusiasm for the soccer team. Even though the Chinese organization tried to recruit some of the nationalized athletes to compete for the Chinese team, their ranking is still kind of low. So as a fan and also as a scholar in the sports communication, so why do you think the soccer is so popular in China? However, the development is still limited, and also the competitive power of the national team and also some other professional team is pretty low in China?
First, this is a great question. So I didn't know Chinese men's soccer is ranked 94th globally. I'm wondering what is the U.S. rank soccer team?
Probably in the top 50.
Usually in 15 or 16. You said 14? Yeah, we're usually in the teens.
Okay.
Currently it's 16th.
16.
Yes, according to the FIFA standing. Yeah.
Okay. So I think this question is fascinating. This is also the most debated question in Chinese online. So if you go to a soccer community, this question is always there. So we have a thing like China has 1.3 billion of population. How come you cannot find 11 men to play this ball, this simple ball? How can? Why we're 94th globally. We have 4 times of population than the United States. I think that complaint is really overlook the tremendous effort to build a good, solid, professional sport team like soccer, like basketball. That statement kind of oversimplifies the complexity of professional sports, especially team sports. So before this panel, I did my research. I see Real Madrid was established on 1902. So that is 123 years ago. So NFL was established 1920, 105 years ago. NCAA was established on 1906. So about 120 years ago. But China, People's Republic of China, was established 1949. So we talk about China, many people think this is a very old country. It's an ancient, one of the country with the longest history. But in terms of the country, the Republic of China, it's 1949, so it's a very young country, actually. So, however, this country also goes through so many wars and not a stable period. The modern sport really started to build up in 90s or 80s. So it's really the history of modern sport, of professional sport, is really short. So I checked the first China's professional soccer league actually was founded in 1994. So actually it's younger than me. So how can you expect a professional league in China with this short history can be performed very well in the world? So that's very hard. So, and also people now we hear about China all the time, especially recently on media. It seems China is a competing power, it's a superpower, and also we gain great success on Olympics. People may have a impression that China is very strong in sport, but I'll see in terms of professional sport, it's not. So China is great on Olympics, but if you look at the events, the disciplines, they're winning medals, the majority of them is individual sport, and also the not super professionalized sport. So in this type of sport, if you put a lot of effort and money, you train individuals, you can quickly perform, improve very much. But for soccer, for basketball, it's about team synergy, team cohesion. So the players need to develop their game intelligence over competitions, over years. It's really not that easy to develop in a short time. So I think China is not performing well. I'm not surprising because China doesn't have a system, a sports system, a grassroots system to build their sports in a cohesive way. So I think this is why soccer in China actually is harder to develop than in the United States. Although soccer is not very, very big in the United States, but you have very established sport system. From middle school, from high school, college sport, this actually, I think US people spent more than 100 years to build up. This system is cultivate players, cultivate all of people, support people to go elite. But in China, this system is still developing and also in a very early stage. Even it's hard. If you are talented in China, you still need to face a lot of structural system to stand out. So I think that would be the system issue, I think is the most important one. Yes.
Yeah, great. And especially when we talk about professional sports,
Yes.
it's kind of like a business model. But in China, the reason why Olympics is so popular and successful is usually the government will pay the salary to athletes and they will get trained at a very young age. So they have the support from the government at a
Yes.
very young age. So that is totally different from the soccer area, because soccer, like basketball and the other big four league, they usually will highly rely on the business model you will have for a certain country. So I totally agree that the system may be one of the most important reasons that causing this one.
Yes,
Yeah.
and China actually has money. We love soccer. We love soccer so much. We hire like some very famous coaches come to China to coach our national men's soccer team. But it's not going well because I think the system has an issue. You don't have a pipeline of talents step by step going up. You just hire someone, great coach. That doesn't really solve the system issue, the ecosystem issue. Yes.
And those famous coach, when they came a few years later, they will just leave with disappointed in their face. So it's
We are
pretty common.
disappointed too.
Yeah. Yeah. So next question is for all of our panelists, which is also very popular topics. So we will have the 2026 World Cup in the United States and also in the Mexico and Canada next year, which will be a really huge event that will influence some of the soccer development in the United States. So I would like to ask, based on everyone's identity, like a coach, professor, and also media worker, so how do you think, or what kind of opportunity and challenge do you think the 2026 World Cup will bring to the soccer development in the United States? So what is your perspective?
From my perspective, it's going to bring attention, and attention is a great thing. And anytime you look at any level of sport, be it advertising, be it television revenue, be it the specific entertainment of the highlights that come with it, the World Cup brings the best players in the world, and then the national pride that goes with it. And so if you're an American sports fan and you're a Bears fan or Bulls fan or Cardinals or Yankees or pick your team, you have a passion for that. But it's nothing compared to an entire country backing their team. And it mirrors the Olympics that we see every 4 years, both winter and summer, where these become household names for a short period of time. And the World Cup brings that too. It also escalates a player's status really high. You perform at that level, and with that many eyes on you, you're going to make a lot of money. So the impact there is really good. Down to us as Americans, and I think American soccer players, hopefully brings the money that brings facilities, coaches, and education. Because those are things, to the point of the Chinese reference of what they're lacking, is the resources to get everything in line. And I will say, as someone that's traveled to, 22 or 24 different countries and seen how they operate, one of our challenges is we're too big. And China's too big because the land mass is so huge. Think about it, if you're from Boston, Massachusetts, and you play soccer in February, and you're from LA, you don't play the same soccer. Because in Boston, there's 3 inches of snow, the wind's blowing sideways, everything, and then in LA, it's perfect. So you end up with different personalities, different cultures. And so it's a melting pot in the United States, which has a ton of benefits, but it has its challenges too. But the World Cup sometimes brings that all together in a really good way. And we saw that in '94, and it created our league, and we've done great things since then. So we can't do that again because we already have the league, but I think it's can it boost it up? And that would be a big one from my perspective.
Dr. Xu.
I think World Cup is a great opportunity for the soccer's expansion in the United States. So although soccer was not super popular, it's not comparable to NFL and NBA in the United States. But I see you all, when you grow up, you play soccer. It's one of the most popular sport curriculum in US education, right? Elementary school, middle school. So I see there is a grassroots foundation. And also the system, US, this sport system is just so established. You can just adding soccer to the system to grow the sport. So with this spotlight, I'm sure it will going to encourage more people pay attention to soccer. And I see that is happening in my class. Now so many students, they're devoted to soccer fan and more and in my class. So I see when we do the sport development in the US history, we see the soccer's popularity and attention is skyrocketing in the United States. So I definitely think World Cup is a great opportunity for soccer's expansion in the United States, and it has a good foundation as well. Yes.
Thank you, Miguel.
I'm going to go a different route. Obviously, the World Cup is an opportunity to showcase everything here in the States. But I'm going to go the route of tourism. You're going to have people who are going to come from all over the world to come see this spectacle. We have some of the best stadiums here, so that's a chance for us to show our infrastructure. I'm not sure if any of you guys have seen Mercedes-Benz Stadium where the Atlanta Falcons play, but it's a fantastic stadium. It's things like that, the tourism, you know. People are going to try to come here and get a travel visa just to be here and study and go to the World Cup and things like that. Those are the things that we can showcase here. And like everyone has already said on this panel, the foundation is there. We have the infrastructure, we have the programs, we have the financial backing. So this is really just an opportunity to show, hey, yeah, soccer might not be the most popular sport here in America, but we have what it takes for it to become the most popular thing in America. Because there's no doubt that the MLS in maybe 20 years from now could compete with the NFL, with the NBA. All these programs that we watch now started from somewhere, and it's the same thing with soccer. It's only been around for 30 years. Imagine how much it can grow within the next 20 years, especially after this World Cup.
I agree. I think the younger generation, especially if they can really see the World Cup in person, have a chance with their family, they will be a really good memory for their whole life. And they may become just soccer fan because they attend a certain soccer game that in person. So I think that is a pretty good chance for the United States to use this World Cup as a really great chance to try to expand the most popular sports all around the world to make that more popular in the United States. So we just talk a lot about soccer, and I mentioned that we will also want to talk about something about American football. Compared with soccer, American football is the most popular sport in the United States. However, compared with the MLB success in many countries like South Korea and Japan, and like NBA so popular in China, the NFL expansion overseas seems like still limited. And also, I know that Dr. Xu, you are currently working on a research project which talking about American football fans in China. So can you share with us, like, why do you want to conduct this study and what kind of interesting finding you have already get from this project?
Thank you. So this is the project I'm currently doing. So I came to the United States when I was 22, but before my 22 years in China, I didn't know there is a sport called American football. I know soccer, but I never heard about American football. And I came here, I landed in Atlanta, and I studied in UGA. I was shocked to see how Saturday was like the school bus stopped. Like everyone is crazy for a sport I never know before I come to the United States. So that was a culture shock of mine when I was 22. So the longer I getting here, so I start to watch some American football. I noticed that the NFL actually tried to expanding in China like more than 20 years ago. So their first Like China NFL office was established in 2007 in Shanghai, but I just never knew about that. So they are not doing very well in China in terms of the expansion. So I tried to figure out, so what are the challenges and how Chinese people really adopt this new sport, this very new and very not familiar sport. So we conducted 26 interviews of NFL consumers in China to look at how they live in China but become NFL fans, NFL consumers. So I do have a question for you. So imagine if you are trying to promote NFL, American football in China, what would be the population you want to target? Who are the people you think they're most likely to accept this sport? Yes?
Probably kids, 12 to 16, before they do adulthood.
So kids, 12 to 16 teenagers. Very good.
Whatever goes wrong in the World Cup when it does happen here in the States, they should learn from that and make the necessary needed changes within those next 2 years for the 2028 Olympic Games, because 2 years is a long time, but it goes by like that, you know? And LA is a big market, it's one of the largest markets in the world, but how are they gonna handle that influx of traffic? Because you're gonna have a bunch of people in LA, and LA is already densely populated. It's things like that. How is the infrastructure in LA going to hold up? You know, the Rose Bowl Stadium is one of the oldest stadiums. Are they gonna do any type of remodeling before 2028? Are they gonna make the infrastructure better? Is the infrastructure okay? It's things like that that they need to consider, but I think that the 2028 Olympics will be a great turnout. I mean, the previous Olympic Games in Paris was pretty good. I don't know if you guys watched over the summer, but to me it was pretty good. So if they can do whatever they need to do for this upcoming World Cup and use that as a stepping stone into the 2028 LA Olympic Games, I think that the next 4 years that we have these big events of sports, it could catapult the US into a complete different market and a complete different era.
That's a really great connection. And I remember the last time the United States hosted the Winter Olympics is in Salt Lake City in 2002. So after that, it seems like the World Cup and the Olympics haven't arrived at the United States for a long time. So maybe the next few years will be a really good chance for the United States to repick some of the really proud of hosting countries to have such sporting event which can enhance the popularity of sports in the United States and also show some of the soft power to our world. Dr. Xu, what do you think?
For me, one thing exciting about 2028 Olympics is flag football is added as a official sport in there. So I think this endeavor is really NFL push forward because they want to use flag football to promote NFL as a product to the world. So as our studies show, so if you try to expand overseas, sometimes media that is not enough. You encourage people to participate into this sport. But American football, the tackle football, is just so hard for average people to participate. So they go to a different route. They promote flag football. So it's simpler, more accessible, and they want to use that to promote American football. And in our study, many people actually get to know NFL through flag football. So that's I think it's a very smart and effective way to promote NFL as a product. So I see maybe with more people, like especially China, that we really value Olympics. If you add this sport as an Olympic event, people really going to pay attention to that. I think that could, to a large extent, will switch people's attention to this new sport, and maybe they'll play in park. Maybe after play a while, they start to get in to see some NFL games, likely. So I'm excited to see how flag football is included in LA games.
And the flag football is always associated with Olympics, and Olympics associated with nationalism. And many countries would like to watch the Olympics because of nationalism. So this is a really good way to promote some of the sports people are not very familiar with.
Yes.
So that totally will be a great help.
Yes.
Yes. Coach Regan.
Yeah, the Olympics is a really interesting event that as a fan, spectator on television, or whatever device I'm watching on, it's a lot about individual stories. So when you're going through and you watch the broadcast, they spend a lot of time talking about the individual sports and the attempt of what these athletes are doing, being it sprinters, swimmers, gymnastics, etc. Major sports like basketball, Team USA becomes a big deal, men and women, because they're both dominant and really good. But the individual stories seem to be more valuable. But that's the American angle. I don't watch the Olympics in other countries, so I don't know what it looks like when I'm in Paris or when I'm in England. My guess is they're the same. That they're promoting their own people. I'm sure China very much so because of their success of individual athletes. So that's a really unique event that is always, I think, just excitement. It brings a lot of excitement, and it brings a common conversation in every classroom, in every bar, in every restaurant, in every church, in every location, because so many people have their eyes on one thing at one time. And as it connects to the World Cup, to go back to 26, as Miguel pointed to some infrastructure things, remember this World Cup, because here we are as Americans, we don't share well. It is a joint World Cup. Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. are hosting together. And South Korea and Japan did it in 2002, and this is becoming a new model. And I'm curious to see if the Olympics potentially goes the same route of joining countries and expanding the reach, because Miguel made the point about LA. It's a very densely populated place, and if you don't follow the Olympics at all, one of the biggest complaints is like Olympic Village is rough. These poor people sleep on cardboard boxes. Elite athletes don't stay in 5-star hotels. They stay in one village because it costs so much money to bring thousands and thousands of athletes to one place. And so I could see a model here for the future where if the joint World Cup becomes popular, that a joint Olympics hosting, especially in a place like Europe, where mobility between countries is really easy, it could be maybe a change for the future that we've never seen.
Thank you. According to my memory, I don't remember there's a time Olympics was hosted by different countries. Yeah, so maybe that would be a new model if like the World Cup works really well, and some of the countries may just want to work together so they can have enough financial support and also can provide the necessary equipment for all the Olympics. Thank you, everyone. So now we will start to take the question from our audience. Yes, please.
This is going to be a very loaded question here, so just sit tight with me. So if you guys can remember back to 2019 when Houston Rockets GM Daryl Morey put out a tweet in support of Hong Kong, which led to China suspending television coverage of NBA games throughout the country for at least a little bit. And in 2020, it's been theorized that the NBA and Commissioner Adam Silver pushed Morey to resign from his position on the Rockets, who are considered far and away China's favorite American basketball team. And then a few years later, Turkish NBA player Enes Freedom, formerly Enes Kanter, believing that he lost his career in the NBA for speaking out against the Chinese government. So basically what I'm asking here is, are you concerned with professional sports leagues like the NBA sacrificing its moral compass in exchange for large revenue deals with countries like China, who they're often at odds with the US politically?
That's a great question. So NBA is doing so well in China. So that is their second, that is their biggest market out of the United States. So I think NBA earns so much money there, they definitely don't want to give up that market. Sport is so unique, like other media product. If you have a new market, like a giant market outside, your cost actually producing the content for the overseas market is very, very low compared to the returns. So I see overseas expansion is so appealing for any sports leagues, but I agree that comes with a lot of risks, like this type of crisis coming along. So I think that is just hard to avoid. That is just the leagues need to learn how to deal with that. So I know people will see, so that will hurt our beliefs of our teams. That is not fair for you fire the person to be there. But I think NFL, NBA is their a business, and they want to expand overseas. So they have to make a balance out of there. So I see that is just, it's hard to avoid.
I would like to add a point because I did a research project focusing on the Daryl Morey's case. I think it's just to focus on the collaboration is whether you ask this question from a fan perspective or you ask this question from the commissioner or the boss or the manager perspective. At the end, if you want to expand business to overseas, globalization can be really risky and will bring a lot of unknown challenges for you if you want to make money in another culture. Like we know the World Cup has already been hosted in Russia and also been in the Middle East countries. So when you want to have such an event there, it's more likely to say we try to avoid some of the things that will bring us in trouble. And if we are involved in that, just accept the results. If you want to make the money, for example, like commissioner need to take some action. And if you want to stay with your ethical belief that your culture want to promote, you have to maybe make a sacrifice, maybe lost the whole maybe market for several years. That is the true for the NBA in China, because that stopped broadcasting NBA game and lost millions of dollars immediately.
And I think to that point, I think it's not just necessarily Russia or the Middle East. Nearly every country that's hosted the World Cup or the Olympics in recent years, some sort of humanitarian or social controversy has arisen, obviously most recently in Qatar. That's eventually going to happen in the US, and how do you think us as a country, and specifically our government, are going to be able to kind of deal with that backlash?
I think we have the benefit, though, versus some of these countries you're referring to. We have stadiums, we have so much already in place that we don't have to go really low on labor to improve what we have. We also have billionaire owners of stadiums that see the benefit not only of an event like the Olympics, but concerts. And if Taylor Swift comes to your venue, that's just as good as the Super Bowl. So there's lots of layers to that. You mentioned the moral compass when you asked your initial question, and moral compasses get swayed when money's involved, don't they? And this isn't little money. This is big, big money. And so I think people are willing to change their opinion in some of those moments. And there's also, if you go back in American sports history to Jackie Robinson, to Muhammad Ali, to Colin Kaepernick, in more recent mind, 3 different tales about civil rights and some views too that also is in the moral compass realm. But didn't necessarily have the money impact that you referenced with China and the NBA. So, man, big topic there. I think you got another panel for that one.
Yes.
My question's kind of going more back on the MLS and such. So do you believe that the attention and buzz that Messi has brought to the MLS will encourage other players across other leagues to do the same and go to the MLS? Or do you think they'll remain in those other leagues and teams because there's not as much popularity or fan base as the other teams in the other leagues?
I think personally, every professional soccer player who plays at the highest level always considers coming to the MLS. a couple years ago, Cristiano Ronaldo almost broke a deal with Sporting Kansas City, but the deal fell through and he ended up going to Saudi Arabia. There's a bunch of other players who also had similar interests. Neymar almost signed a deal with Chicago Fire, but that fell through and he ended up going back to Brazil to play for Santos. But if you look at MLS as a whole, the league already has history of having big names. We had Frank Lampard, we had Andrea Pirlo, we had Bastian Schweinsteiger, and now we have Lionel Messi. The game is changing, right? Sometimes grass isn't greener at the other side, you know? That's what happened to Messi when he went to PSG. He thought, I was going to this super team and I'm gonna win another Champions League, and that's not what happened. And he wanted out. And he wanted to go back to Barcelona, but the financials restrictions were not there, so he had to pivot. It was go to MLS, start a new adventure, start something for yourself. Now he's deemed as the GOAT. He won the World Cup after that. So it's not that players won't come here. It's now about how is the league going to market them when they come here. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of big names have also come after Messi. There's Emil Forsberg, who plays at New York Red Bulls. There's Eric Choupo-Moting, who played at Bayern Munich and PSG, who's also in MLS. There's a lot of players who are leaving Europe to come to MLS when they're younger and not when they're older. I think Messi kind of changed that game. Players are not considering coming to MLS when there's only 2 years left in them to play. There's a guy called Jonathan Bamba who played at Lille in France, and then after that he also played at Celta Vigo in La Liga. And he's about 28 years old. He just signed a deal to come to Chicago Fire, and he plays in the league now. So those are a few examples of players who are now considering coming to the league. You know, everybody's situation is different. You know, MLS was seen as a retirement stop, and I think Messi coming before he retires changed the game for a lot of players. So now it's about how is the league going to market these players when they came here? Because when Messi came, they gave him the Apple TV package. Boom, this is yours. So when we have the opportunity to get someone like a Kylian Mbappe or Erling Haaland or a Jude Bellingham, how is the league going to pivot and make them the face of the league? That's what it is, because you can argue the NBA has the same problem right now. Once LeBron retires, who's going to be the face of the league? Who's going to be the face of the NBA? And I think that's what these organizations need to figure out, how they're going to project and how they're going to market the next face of the league.
You know, in history, Messi wasn't the first to come to America. If you go back to the 70s, watch yourself a New York Cosmos. I just find a movie on it, read an article about it. Pele came in the 70s, and 70,000 people showed up to watch a soccer game in America, and in every city all over the country when he was playing, because he was such an icon. Messi's just a repeat of that. And there's one thing about MLS that will limit, to kind of answer your question, I don't think it will be that significant because money. There's just not enough money to go around. And he's in Miami. Most go to LA or New York. You don't see a lot of people showing up in Columbus, Ohio, or Philadelphia, or Montreal. And so there's only certain cities I think that the big names want to live in, and I think that will limit the influx of major superstars.
I was more wondering, obviously soccer in the US and soccer in China has been around for a while now. And more specifically, there's been like other sports that come around in the past 30 or 40 years that have possibly, arguably, like got into this cultural zeitgeist as, let's say, soccer has. Like MMA, even though in the US it's been around for the past like 30 years, and obviously in other countries it's been around for longer, like in Japan or in Brazil. Do you believe with like a lot of how particularly markets in both China and the US are operated on they're less invested in building audiences in soccer because of time commitment and constraints like money?
I think the answer is yes. I don't think they're interested in it because of the money. I think the money's too low. You have some billionaires that see dollar signs because the ability to buy something at 500 million and sell it at 800 million is a good business in their world. But on the whole, you have to be in a very unique, wealthy class to do that. And that's not a long list of people that can afford to jump into it. And Miguel pointed in the very beginning of a panel, attendance around the stadiums, it's better, but it's not really impressive. And therefore, when you're watching the events, whether it's a highlight or the full game, it's not that impressive when there's empty seats. And you don't watch NBA games that are half full. You would turn it off because it would just seem lame. And it's going to take a lot of time to get there. A lot of competition in this country. And I imagine in China, as was mentioned, it's so hard to get the people to focus and create a league and then develop a passion for it when the country just doesn't have the depth of experience in professional sports. But I'm not an expert on that.
For China, people love soccer. So although China is famous for ping pong, you would maybe some people will think people are crazy about ping pong, about badminton or something. Actually not. So the sport in China earn money, earn the audience heard is basketball and soccer. So that's why when Messi was not show up in that Hong Kong's game, people go crazy. So if you go to China, people are not their local franchise fan. They're all like a satellite fan of these European clubs. So China's issue is not about audience. Audience is always crazy and so passionate. So they're just some impatient of how slow the national soccer is growing. So because of the disappointment, so most of them go to consume European soccer. They become a fan of European teams.
I'm going to play devil's advocate and to speak on soccer here in the United States. I think that the business model of soccer also hurts the organization. There's a salary cap here in MLS, where in the European countries there is no salary cap, but there is a balance of books because you have to be able to account for how much you're spending and make the same amount of revenue. So there is that checks and balances, but I think here, because there is that salary cap, there's very much limitations. You're only able to get players on free agency. And we all know how free agency goes. You're competing with multiple markets, and some markets are bigger than yours. So I think maybe in the next 5 years, if the league does get rid of that salary cap, it does open the window of opportunity to get more European players. But then it becomes a dangerous ball game because then you have billionaires who just have an obscene amount of money who just keep spending and spending. And then you have lower markets, as we mentioned earlier, that just aren't going to get that exposure. You're not going to get someone come from Europe and say, I'm going to go play at Columbus, Ohio. You know, they're going to try to go to Orlando. They're going to try to go to LA. They're going to try to go to Miami, New York, the big markets. So I think that's also an issue itself in the league, and it kind of hinders that audience growth as well.
Thank you, everyone. And I think that is the end of this year's the Steiner Symposium. And I hope everyone will pay more attention to like the World Cup and the Olympics, which will be coming in the next few years. And I hope everyone just enjoy different type of sports in the future, and also appreciate some of the really great sportsmanship that we always admired, always in the United States. Thank you, everyone. And that is the end of this Steiner Symposium. And please give some of the plug to our panelists today for their hard work and playing for a long time. Thank you.